All righty, welcome to tonight's live stream, you guys. I hope that you all are doing well. My name is Jasmine. If you're not already familiar, I am a practicing witch. I'm the high priestess of the Solar Court Coven, and this is my channel. Here we talk about witchcraft, folklore, paganism. I just kind of share about my experiences as a coven witch, and yeah, we just kind of sometimes talk casually. We talk about spellcraft, ritual, things like that. I have a special guest with me today, which I'm very excited to have. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Paige. I am a member of Jasmine's Coven, and I'm also a writer and a practicing witch, obviously. And I'm excited here to talk to you about Covenry and being solitary, which I've experienced both.
Same, yeah. And even within like our SCC, like we're all also solitary witches as well. We've all been solitary witches prior to our initiation, and we all still have our own solitary practice, even as initiated coven witches. So, but I have a thread on Facebook. If you guys aren't already, check out the description in this video. I normally have like my Instagram and Facebook. You can reach out to me that way. If you're interested in, talking with me directly, that's the best way to do it. But I reached out to you guys and I made a post asking you guys about how you feel about covens. Do you feel pro or against them? And do you think that they're a good thing, a bad thing? Do you feel like they're beneficial to witches, or do you think that they can sometimes stunt witches' growth? So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to share the screen here and share some of the comments that you guys left on my page. And Paige and I are going to be going over some of these and just kind of commenting on them. And I want to kind of give a disclaimer here that, while there might be some times where Paige and I might disagree or agree with some of the comments left, we're just really going to be looking at the commentary that's left. So please don't take any of our reactions to the commentary like personal. We're just going to really have a candid, honest conversation about Covenry as we are coven witches. I kind of wanted to do this mostly because I feel like as a coven witch, I run into a lot of solitary witches. As someone who works in a metaphysical store, who's a reader, who teach classes, I run into all types of witches, and most of those witches are solitary. And a lot of the witches have had negative experiences with Covenry or aren't interested, which it's fine. I mean, I know speaking for our coven and many other covens like ours, like we don't prophesize. So it's not like we're out here trying to convince witches to join or anything. But I wanted to kind of start this thread because I know that there are a lot of practitioners who do feel some type of way, which interestingly enough, on the post, most people said that they were pro-coven.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. And I really liked getting some perspective when I look through these comments too, because, there's a lot of different types of covens out there, and there are a lot of different dynamics, just like with any group of people. So I think that there are many facets that you could look at as far as is Covenry right for you or not. And I think a lot of people, especially if they're newer to the craft, feel like, oh yeah, I want to be in a coven, or a lot of people, if they've been practicing alone for a long time, might shirk covenry because they don't want to change their ways. And I totally think that both of those feelings are valid. And I just want to, it's nice to get a pulse on the community and kind of see um, what everyone thinks and just discuss their commentary and have an open dialogue, which I think is super important in the pagan community.
I do too, and I feel like it's something that oftentimes a lot of other covens aren't willing to really have space for. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people will be like, "Well, that's not what we believe, so we're gonna shut this down." But this is nice that we can go through and have a dialogue about everything and just kind of come together as practicing witches and learn from one another. That's really what it's all about, honestly.
well, let's get into some of these comments here. I'm going to take our overlay down. Do you guys like our overlay? Let us know if you like this cute little overlay. Oh, please. There we go. And I apologize, you guys. I'm like getting over a little cold here. So if I sound a little froggy, that's why. I'm looking at the comments here. Hi, Solavi. Hi, Blood. Thanks for making it. Hi, Chris. Hi, Rixie. Thanks for coming out, you guys. Hi, God King Cthulhu. Hey, Lady Raven Moon. Good to see you guys. Okay.
Oh, hi, Solavi. I see you said hi to me. That's
We love
nice of you.
Solavi. Okay, so basically the post was this. What's one assumption that you have about Covenry? What would you consider yourself, pro or anti Covenry in the craft community? Personally, I find there to be like like the polarizing questions. Sometimes the more polarizing questions are, sometimes the more intellectually stimulating I think that they are. Because if you kind of like create this polarity of like, no, you're either yes or no, because like I think so much in the craft is gray. If you kind of force yourself to be on one side of the fence or the other with certain issues, I think it is really interesting. So for those of you listening to this stream, because we're not going to be on video tonight, we're just kind of keeping it casual with this. But for those of you listening, let us know what's one assumption that you have about Covenry. And would you consider yourself someone who's pro Covenry or anti Covenry? Do you feel that as a whole, Covenry is beneficial for witches? Or do you feel like as a whole it's harmful? And like for real, you're welcome to whatever opinion that you have. So our first comment here, this comment here from Kimber. Kimber says pro, but me myself would rather just do this thing mostly alone with help along the way. In a sense, common sisterhood is all the covenry I need. I'm just a loner in that sense because I'm pretty eccentric for the average witch, and I imagine a coven putting up with my weird bullshit. Do you have anything to say about that, Paige?
I really love this comment because it sounds like this person knows what they want and they're not just trying to like people please. They acknowledge that, covens could be good for other people, but maybe not for themselves. And it kind of sounds like this person like knows who they are as a witch and knows how they function. I like that they said that they're looking for common sisterhood, which in my opinion is not only what covenry is. I think you can find companionship and support and friendship and circling or in any kind of social group setting. I think that you can do that without being in a coven. Absolutely, you get that in covenry as well, but I think that there's a lot more that goes into it than just being friends and hanging out together. So I like that this person said like that's really all they're looking for, so they know that a coven wouldn't be right for them. And I really admire people that know what they want and know how they function, and they kind of stand firm on who they are, and they know that like covens could be good, but maybe not for them. So I tend to agree with that stance when it comes to committing yourself to the craft. Like, this person's committed to staying solitary, and I admire and commend that, honestly.
The only thing that I can think to really add to everything that you said, because I think you said it very well, is just I feel like if the main thing you're looking for is quote unquote like sisterhood, which not all covens are just women, but if you're just looking for just sisterhood, or if you're just looking for a friend group or a social network, I would strongly discourage like traditional covenry, um, if that's all you're looking for. Also, hi, Little Red. Thanks for making it. You know who that is, right? That's
Yes, I do. I do.
okay. So the next one by Jennifer Felty. I don't think I'm pro or against. I technically have a coven, and while we support one another, we mostly only practice together on holidays. So we are solitary practitioners that have holiday parties. I think if you're more comfortable with others, then do your thing. If not, then don't. I think if there was a reason I'd rather not, it's the same as any social situation, and that you don't always have control over who you're interacting with, sharing space with, and that what you think you're getting out of people doesn't always match what they show you along the way. Groups and people can be toxic, and if your entire spiritual identity is based on the collective, as a lot of habitual Covenants I've personally interacted with tend to be, I think having to make the choice between healthy people and circle perpetuating behavior could be rather devastating. So find your balance. Any thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot to unpack in that one.
I agree. I think that there's like several points there. Where do you want
I
to
want
start?
to I want to start with, I don't know this person, so I'm not going to make any assumptions, and I hope I don't offend this person when I talk about this. I whenever this person said, I technically have a coven, and while we support one another, we mostly only practice together on holidays. So we're solo practitioners that have holiday parties. That to me doesn't sound like covenry. That sounds like circling. And to those of you that maybe don't really know the difference or know the point of a coven, like a coven is a group of witches that's initiated into a tradition, and they are bound magically and they practice magic together on a regular basis. I mean, I guess if you get together on the sabbats or the holidays, or however you want to define it, that's regularly if you do it consistently. However, because it's like holiday parties and that's kind of the way this person phrased it. It sounds a little bit more social to me. So I think I'd start there. What are your thoughts on that comment, Jasmine?
Yeah, I agree. I think, and also too, for those of you who might just now be tuning in, we are just purely reacting to some of these comments from our coven tradition. So, like, this is not us policing in any way, saying who can be in a coven, who can't be in a coven, who's right, who's wrong. This is just our hot takes, reacting to your guys' comments. To me, I think I agree. Like, the holiday party doesn't really sound like a ritual. And I think, like, a big thing that makes a coven to me is ritual. Like if we're not doing ceremonial magic, if we're not doing ceremonial ritual, then I don't really feel like I would label that as a coven personally. I would agree with you, and I would call that maybe more like a casual circle, which there's nothing wrong with that either. Um, and then like in terms of the part where they said that you don't always, have a choice on who you're sharing space with. I would actually argue that if you're in an initiatory coven, if you're already initiated, then you should have a say in who's in that space because you guys are making that space together. So there shouldn't be someone in the space who you really don't vibe with. Now, if you're not already initiated, right, and you're seeking initiation into a coven, and if you don't vibe with one or more of the people who are already initiated, then that particular coven, I'm going to say, is probably not going to be a good fit for you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't know of a tradition that, and I granted I don't know every single tradition, right? And every single coven, but I don't really know a tradition that would initiate a witch that that people in the coven don't vibe with, or and if you initiate into a coven that and you don't like all the people in the coven, you've chosen to initiate into that coven. You could have backed out at any moment. So
Yeah.
you need to vibe and choose with whom you share space with. 100%, absolutely. If you it's a very big deal, like, to share space with somebody you don't like, that magic is not gonna go well. So, yeah, I would disagree with that and say or disagree with what the poster said and said, "You do absolutely should, in coven situations, have choice over who you share space with." An open ritual, an open sabbat, a circle, a social gathering, a meetup of witches, maybe not, but definitely in a coven, like you should 100% have some say in who you share space with and magical ties with.
I want to touch on what I'm proud to be pagan. First of all, like, guys, I'm seeing the chat. There's some great like conversations and questions going on there, and I don't want you guys to feel like we're ignoring you. But so to start first with what we're talking about, we are talking about initiatory covenry. We are talking about like which cults, which covens. I saw someone earlier kind of equate Covenry to cult, and like they're not the same thing, but there are like the cults of Isis and the cults of Hecate that were deemed cults in their time. And so sometimes like the witch cult, like via Margaret Murray, like the witch cult of Europe, the word cult is used, but it's not necessarily the same thing as cult, like with a capital C. So what we're talking about is traditional witchcraft. We're talking about initiatory witchcraft. We're talking about lineage based covenry. We're talking about our particular neo tradition here. So we are not Gardnerians. We're not Alexandrians. We're not eclectic Wiccans. We're talking about our tradition, and we're having these conversations from our perspective. So I hope so, Olivia, that helps like define, and I'm proud to be pagan too. Like I hope that that helps kind of define covenry. I would say one way that we define covenry is we are a neo-traditional initiatory witchcraft coven lineage, and we get together for ceremonial ritual and ceremonial magic.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. But a coven is like you don't have to be pagan to be in a coven either. It depends on the tradition. It depends on there are people in our coven that have various beliefs on deities as well. So like just because paganism does not always equal witchcraft, just like witchcraft does not equal paganism, just like witchcraft does not equal covenry. So they're all like kind of different terms that can intersect and often do intersect, but don't have to intersect. So we talk about covenry, we're specifically talking about a group of witches in a certain tradition who are initiated into that tradition together.
Agreed. Okay, so the next one here from Amy says the assumption is that covens should be intimate. You don't have to be best friends, but you do have to be more than acquaintances. And covens aren't organizations. I know that Margaret Murray set the coven limit at 13, but I actually think it's 9. Any bigger than 9, you lose the intimacy of a coven and move into organization territory. It's no longer intimate. I'm pro coven, but having been burned not once, but twice by a lack of intimacy in my own coven, I'm rather demanding of it now. If I ever move away physically from my current coven, though, I find it unlikely, I would join another. I'm an introvert, so attending a less intimate public ritual from an organization would be fine. So is this person already in a coven? Is that what they're saying? If I ever move away physically from my current coven, so they're already in.
Yeah, yeah. I think this person's saying that they've been in 3 covens at least and been burned twice before because it got too big and it wasn't intimate. And I'm kind of in agreement about like numbers, I think, because depending on how your coven operates and what you do, if you have a bunch of witches in a coven, it does lose its intimacy, and it is hard to manage everyone's schedules, even like even schedules.
For sure. For
I mean,
sure.
we have trouble enough as it is, and it's just like and we try to schedule everything like far in advance so everybody can ask off for work or make arrangements or whatever. But I couldn't imagine having like 20 people in a coven and trying to schedule it. Just that alone logistically would be a
Well, and
nightmare.
I would say that 20 people in one coven line is really not, to me. That's where it moves into, geez, did you hear my dogs?
Yeah.
Yes. You guys, if you hear like any weird demon noises going on in the background, those are just my dogs. Um, but hey, listen, so I'm here out in the living room, so I'm with them right now. Normally I film in my office, you guys, so just bear with me. But I would go so far to say that for me, I kind of think that Margaret Murray's number of 13 is kind of like the suggested hard limit.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's up to individual covens to decide what that number looks like for themselves. I think that 13 is supposed to kind of be like a no more than this guide. So if covens decide to
Yeah.
hive at like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever, like I think that's up to those individual covens. But I feel like once you move past 13, that to me is when you're moving into congregation territory. I, though, kind of do think that a coven should also kind of work as an organization. Like there should be different people of different roles facilitating and taking care of different aspects of the group. Like I
Yeah.
do think in some ways it's kind of more like a coven can be an organization, especially if the coven hives off and proliferates.
Well, Alexandrianism and Gardnerianism are like two of the golds that we have as far as like initiatory craft goes, simply because their information on them is very accessible and they've been around for a while, not necessarily because they're the best. But if you look at that, those two traditions are organized. They have a degree system. They have procedures for hiving. They have procedures for the sabbats. They have roles that everyone has to fill. And I think that you can have organization. You should have organization, but you don't necessarily have to lose the intimacy and the connection. Like there should be a connection. If you're not connecting with somebody in your coven, if you're not connecting on a spiritual level with these people, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to share space with them magically. So, um, I don't think that necessarily just because there's organization, it's a loss of intimacy. I think that that's something that if you feel like you're losing intimacy, you put that to the high priestess, the high priest, the second degrees, the third degrees, whoever is in your leadership in your coven, and you talk about that. Um, because there needs to be organization, especially if you have 9 people in your coven. You have to be organized. You have
Yeah,
to.
and I think a lot of people, I want to talk about what I'm proud to be pagan here is saying. I'm proud to be pagan says so anyone can essentially make their own coven. Now, this is going to be a hot topic in the craft community. I am of the opinion that yes, anyone can start a coven. To me, like I said, a coven it's a group of witches that are getting together to practice ceremonial ritual and magic and more than likely have an initiatory process like and have degree systems. So anyone can kind of start that up. Will that be successful? That's what the real test is. Anyone can start a club, but it takes a certain type of people to be able to run a club successfully and have longevity with it. There's personality types that are involved with this to an extent, I think. Um, but yeah, there's nothing stopping. Like, I'm proud to be a Canadian. If you're thinking about starting a coven, if you feel like that's what you want to do, then my advice is just to do it. Like, there's not a governing body to say who can and who can't, regardless of what maybe some of like the old guard witches might have to say. You know, a lot of Gardnerians and Alexandrians are going to like be like, absolutely not, because they feel like you have to go through their lineage. But like their lineage started somewhere too. Everyone's lineage has to start somewhere. So, kind of like the Gospel of Aradia, if you have to be the Aradia for your area, then that's what you have to be.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. I think it would be very hard to start a coven and say, we're going to be a Gardnerian coven if you've not been initiated into Gardnerianism. But
Oh, for
if you want,
sure.
you can't do that, but you can definitely start a coven and say, we're a neo tradition, or we're our
Yeah.
own tradition, we're eclectic, or you can define it using your own label. You don't have to, you can take pieces of Gardnerianism, Alexandrianism, Thelema, whatever. Everyone does that. Um, but
But you
you can't,
definitely, I
you
agree. You can't sit up here and say this is Gardnerian coven if you aren't actually initiated as a Gardnerian.
right. But you can definitely start your own coven. Like, and I encourage you to. I think we need people that are, willing to do that step of daring. If you talk about the witches pyramid, to dare to go um, and start your own coven if you need one in your area. If there isn't one that suits your needs, but witches that want what you want and that would work with you, then go for it. I think that'd be great.
To piggyback here on like what Blood is saying, share the load of responsibility among the members. I would agree if that's what y'all mean. And I think he's referencing like our conversation about how a coven is kind of like an organization. So I would
Hmm.
say to this, to me, a congregation and a coven is separate by the intimacy. To me, a congregation is a large group of people that have a shepherd or a minister that they look to be told where to go and what to do and how to interact with their faith, right? To me, a
Yeah,
coven is a smaller group of people where everyone is taking an active role in their faith. And while there might be the degree system of first, second, and third, that degree system doesn't necessarily mean that second degree is better than first degrees or third degree is better than second degrees because it depends on who you are as a witch and what's best for you. Um, second degrees are going to have more responsibility than first degrees, and third degrees are going to have more responsibility than second degrees. And in my opinion, it takes all three of those aspects to kind of keep a well oiled machine. And within kind of a traditional witchcraft structure, like it's not just a high priest or high priestess. Like it's not just an HP, and that's how the coven works. There's other roles inside of the coven that are used to help support the third degree and the coven as a whole. So there's different roles there. So I feel like that's kind of what I mean by like it being an organization. Also, a lot of times covens will have like community work that they do, whether they're putting on open rituals for the community to experience, trance or connection with the gods or just ceremonial ritual in general. Like we put that on 4 times a year, or like charity work. Like, so there's organizations in that regard. And then if the coven like is putting money together for like retreats or events or things like that, then you also kind of have like a need for like a treasury too. So there's different roles inside the coven that, support the entire coven. It's not just one person. You might see the HP or hear the HP, but like they're not the only ones running the coven. The coven, to me, a healthy coven is functioning with all of its members pouring into the egregore of their hive or of their lineage. That's how a well-oiled coven works, in my opinion.
yeah, I'm with you too on that because you have to have people that share the load. You can't have the high priestess being the only one who takes care of all the money, organizes all the rituals, um, finds all the locations for all the things, gathers all the materials for the rituals. Like, you can't have one person that does it all because that person will just burn out. And also,
Mm-hmm.
um, there have to be checks and balances within the coven system that keep one person from holding all the keys and all the cards and all the power
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Um, so Jamie says, I'm pro whatever you might need at that current time. I've never been in one. I'd love to, though, personally. I don't know if I have anything like to add to that one. Do you?
No, I think it's important to note that if you're in a coven or you're thinking about joining, you should know, and we've talked about this before, and you should know how to exit. So you should know how to enter and exit. So Jamie brings up a good point, whatever you need in that current time. So in our tradition, we have procedures for exiting. You know, it's not one of those things where it's like you're in for life, and then if you leave, like screw you. It's like if you exit the right way and you let us know and like we're able to let you go and move on and be a solitary witch again and no hard feelings. You know, like exit the right way, know how to exit. If Covenry isn't right for you, that's totally fine. And you should feel like you can tell your coven that and exit the right way because there should be a procedure for that. And I
Yeah,
just
and
can't reiterate that enough.
yeah, I agree. Like, I guess if we were to read into like this at the current time, that to me does kind of feel like a little bit willy-nilly. And like
Yeah.
if you go so far as to like go through a whole initiation and then 3 or 4 wheel turns later you just decide like I don't know if this is for me anymore. Like most covens are not going to be super cool with you just dipping out. Like
Hmm.
just like there was a way for you to initiate in, like Paige is saying, most covens also have like, here's how you cord cut and here's how you leave. And that might not be the same day that you feel like the coven is not for you anymore.
Yeah. There's a procedure you should follow. You should know what that procedure is, and you should be respectful enough of everyone's time, energy, and effort to follow that procedure if you do decide that it is no longer something that you need at that current time.
Yeah, because if you don't follow those practices, then you're basically disrespecting the tradition that you just became a part of. And that's not really a good idea. And a lot of times, even in initiation, so for one, before you even initiate, and this just is general advice, not just for our coven, but before you even initiate, you should know how you leave the coven as well. So whoever is prepping your initiation for you, that's a question maybe I would ask before you actually initiate is like, once you get to that step in the initiation process is like, okay, assuming that I'm no longer interested, like how would I leave respectfully? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, good advice.
This next person says, I'm neither pro or against. I don't believe, however, that an online coven with many members is the same as an in person coven. I have a hard time even calling that a coven. I believe it works best in person with a smaller, more personal group of witches who trust and respect each other, both inside and outside of the circle. Not everyone has the opportunity to this kind of coven, in which case an online coven is a great option, but be aware that the same kind of trust does not exist behind the keyboard. I love this comment, and I love the person who left this comment, but like everything in this, I'm just co-signing. Like, yes, 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 yes.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, you really need to see each other in person. I know with like some people live in areas that don't have covens, and some people like with the pandemic, it was hard for people's covens to get together, and maybe they haven't reassembled since then. But really, to do magic together, you need to be in person. And I think it's okay to have an online circle or support group or social group of people that get together and talk. Like we're part of the Indie Witches book club. And oftentimes our book club discussion online, we have an in-person meeting and we do online, but a lot of times our online book club will go into our personal practices, our personal beliefs, our personal feelings around our practice. And it does feel like a social group and almost like a support group in a way of like, so how do you do this? What do you think about this? Like, what's your journey like? Like, where are you at right now in your spiral path? Like, that's what that feels like. And that is great. And I feel like that is wonderful. And I'm so glad I have that with people outside of my coven. But I don't feel like that's a coven. I would never call the Indie Witches Book Club a coven because we don't do spell work together. We don't really see each other. We don't exchange energy. So this person really nailed it whenever she said that the same kind of trust does not exist behind, or whenever they said the same kind of trust does not exist behind the keyboard. I agree with that. Well put.
Yeah, and like I think witchcraft can be evolutionary just like we are. And I mean, if you think about it, Google is essentially now one of the most powerful grimoires witches have ever had access to, right? Like the internet. Like we are living in an age where we have so much information so quickly accessible at our fingertips that like no witch has ever really lived in this era before. Like this is huge. But I think that like while some things can evolve, I do think that there are separate challenges to a coven functioning purely online. Um, there are advantages, I think, to having the internet as part of your coven and like, you know, incorporating that or doing things remotely together, collectively, remotely together. I think that's one way that an online coven could function is like if everyone was kind of doing the same ritual or certain things around a certain time of day and like using similar tools. But if that's all you have, then I still just don't think that that's the same as like an in-person group. And like that's just the ugly truth. Like, and I know that not everyone's able to have in-person groups, and you know, even with COVID and everything, some of us still might not feel super comfortable with groups, and that's fine. But an online group is not going to be able to fully give you the same scope that an in-person group is going to be able to give you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I hope that everybody who's seeking a coven can find one that is good for them, that meets in person. But, if you can't, then sometimes some interaction is better than no interaction if you're looking for group interaction. And sometimes online is all you have, and that's fine. Just maybe, don't assume that that's what Covenry is.
Oh my gosh, speaking of Covenry, it's the Coven chat popping up while I'm live for me. Okay, so the next one here, um, I am somewhere in the middle, I suppose. I'm not anti Coventry at all. However, I do think that there needs to be a healthy amount of vetting on both sides. Don't just join a coven because you want people to do magic with. You can find that without being part of a coven. Take the time to get to know the people in the coven that you are interested in. Make sure you feel welcome and right among them. Same goes for the coven. Don't bring in every witch begging for a community and a magical family. That one person could be the thing that breaks the coven. Coven is about family. Bringing people who don't get that is toxic. Yeah, I agree with that. Hi, Erica. Thanks for joining.
I agree with that as well. We've talked about this before too, but it is a lot of vetting. Um, it is a magical family, and when you bring someone into the coven, you need to be able to trust them, and they need to be able to trust you. There can be no red flags if that's the case. We spend an extensive amount of time vetting anyone who is interested in seeking. I don't think that's breaking fourth power to say that. I think any coven
No, yeah.
worth their salt would do so. And we always tell our seekers this that they need to think about it as well. And we give them plenty of opportunities to ask questions. We give them plenty of opportunities to back out if they decide it's not for them. And we don't take it personally. It's no hard feelings. Like, that's another big thing. If they make you feel like, oh, well, if you decide not to join this coven, then we're never going to be friends again. You're not invited to my birthday party, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's really a red flag as well. But we always let them know, like, hey, if you don't want to be in the coven, that's fine. You can still be a coven cousin or coven adjacent, or we'll still invite you to our open sabbats, like we'll still hang out. We'll still go out for dinner sometimes, like you're still welcome to be our friend, but you just won't be able to take part in fourth power coven only things such as spell work and whatnot. But um, I think that it's good to keep that in mind, that there should be vetting on both sides, and you should feel good about, like, this person said, you should feel good about this. and you should feel like they are, you know, right for you and you're right for them. And yeah, this person said it really well. So I agree, co-sign all of that, like you said.
I agree. I agree. And I think too, like, um, hold on.
Jasmine's telling the Coven chat that she's live right now to stop spamming it.
Okay.
And it keeps going. Your comments will be seen. One of our Coven sisters says hello.
She's like, how your mom and them?
If you minimize it, it won't pop up anymore. Like if you open it and then minimize it,
Okay.
because that's what I did, and it
Okay, I'll
should
have
be
to do
fine.
that. I'll have to do that.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. We got the dogs, we got the Coven kids. I wanted to say we did film a video. So just recently we filmed an Ask a Witch's Coven video, and there's a lot of information in that video, you guys, that kind of ties into this particular comment and into what Paige was saying. And also, the year before that, we filmed an Ask a Witch's Coven group, or an Ask a Witch's Coven like group sort of questions and things like that. So you can watch those two videos from the past 2 years, and you can kind of get like some feedback in more depth, like about this process, like, from seeking to dedicating to petitioning to initiating to first degree to blah, 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 blah. Like there's a whole pathway to do that. And there's a whole process that, not all of that is necessarily public knowledge. Some of that is fourth power, but like there is ways of initiation. It's not just like, oh, you're initiated.
Yeah, there are a lot of details in that video. It's kind of long, so if you're gonna listen to it, like maybe listen to it on a long drive or while you're doing chores. But it's good. It's full of. We pretty much dissect the whole Coven process and the initiation and the degree system and everything that you could possibly want to know about our specific tradition that we can tell you is in that video.
Yeah. The next person says, I think everyone should do what they are drawn to. If you're a solitary, great. If you're in a coven, great. As long as it suits you and you feel comfortable. No disrespect at all to this person who left this comment. Like, I totally agree. I just think that that's very lukewarm. Like that, I think that whole comment, in my opinion, should kind of go without saying. Like, of course. Of course.
Yeah, I'm with you too. It's like, okay, well, I would hope that you would have the respect to respect other people's opinions. I like that attitude of whatever, to each their own kind of thing. Do what thy will or whatever you want to say about it. But yeah, it's a little bit like, I don't really have an opinion. So okay.
The next person says, so I've heard so many things about covens. I've never joined or been asked to join. I feel your beliefs would need to be closely related to do coven work successfully. I have always been a solitary witch, but I have not been officially trained by a high priest or high priestess. There are a lot of opinions about initiations. I don't know enough to have an opinion. Would I get together with a group to perform ritual? Absolutely.
The one thing that sticks out to me about this is, but I have not been officially trained by an HP. That's the only thing that I really like don't think we've talked about that much that you don't okay, so witchcraft, right? It's not like Christianity. A lot of people have that Abrahamic religious trauma that they bring into witchcraft. I get it. That's why you left. Um, but in Abrahamic religion, specifically in Christianity, 'cause that's my background, it's like you go to a pastor or a preacher or reverend or priest, and they tell you, this is how you should live your life. Here's a book that tells you what you should do. Come to my sermons and I'll tell you what you should do. Come to confession and I'll tell you what you should do. Um, That's not witchcraft. That shouldn't be covenry. Trained by an HP isn't really a thing. There are some covens that are teaching covens, I think, where they have like you are a seeker for a year and a day, and you have to do assignments. Like you have to write papers and you have to read books, and like there are definitely courses you can take. I know Jazz is taking one right now. Um, Shout out to Lorelei Black, Red Thread Academy. That's a good one. But if you are getting into Covenry because you want to be trained by an HP, that may not be the coven for you. That's the only one that I really like sticks out to me. I do agree with what this person said about like your beliefs need to be closely related to do coven work successfully. Yes, you should like align and vibe on that level. Um, but yeah, that's the big thing that sticks out to me, the trained by an HP thing.
Yeah, I think that everyone who's initiated into a particular tradition or coven, they would need to agree on at least a certain base set of like tenets or principles or like styles of practicing. So I agree with that. In terms of being trained by an HP, like I agree with this and I also disagree with this. Like I disagree with this in the sense that like I was not initiated by another person. Like I kind of started building this table of our coven here in our local area. And at the time when I was looking to get involved in my local pagan community, I wasn't really finding any place that really felt right for me. And whether that was from other groups not really being super welcoming, or it was just me not finding them, or me not really resonating or connecting with them. So I just kind of decided to start our own tradition, which is why we call our tradition a neo tradition, because it's new. Like, we're not claiming some long hereditary lineage or anything like that. Like, we are a neo tradition. Um, and there's nothing wrong with that. I kind of take a lot of pride in that because that means that all of us are playing such an influential role in our tradition. So, with that being said, I didn't really have an HP that like trained me, guided me, or helped me do any of this. And it was extremely laborsome. Like, there's ritual and there's that aspect of covenry, but there's also like the arts of the craft. And like the arts to me would be things more like tarot, palmistry, astrology, various forms of divination, herbalism, scrying. Like those are more the arts. I do think that it's beneficial to have like to take classes or go to workshops for like some of the things of the arts, like taking a tarot class or doing like going to a meditation workshop. Like I think things like that can be really helpful. Um, I don't necessarily know if I think it should be the job of the high priestess to be teaching people the arts. Like I think if HPs do that kind of work, then great. But to me, I don't think covenry should ever be about like um profiting, like because it's kind of like a religious organization. So I think when you start mixing money into that, it gets weird. However, like paying, money to take a class to learn something is different than paying money to be a part of a coven. So not to like get too off topic with this question, but I feel like an HP is more responsible over instructing and teaching ritual and like ritual etiquette and like the lineage and like the degrees. And like that's what the HP is teaching their tradition. But the HP is not necessarily teaching the arts magical. Like that's something that you should probably have already been pursuing on your own, even prior to initiation and even moving forward, even after you're initiated, is like pursuing your arts of the craft. And I definitely would say it's a red flag if like there's, if the coven is being ran like a business, then there's a lot of those online page. I don't know if you've kind of seen them around or not, but there's a
Yeah,
lot of
I've
those
seen
sort
them
of groups
around.
online that are like, it's basically just someone's Patreon, right? And like everyone who's
Hmm.
subscribed is like allegedly part of the coven. Like that's not a coven.
I think that I do want to point out that Blood, Sweat, and Steel said um, more than directly train each other the correct way to do it. Like, would it be possible? He's asking. or they're asking, I wonder if the HP and fellow coven mates help each other how to train yourself. And the answer to that is absolutely. So in our coven, yes, you have to have some foundational knowledge that you've sought on your own. We have to see proof of that. That's part of the vetting process. That's the first pillar to know. And we talk about that in the Ask Witches Coven video if you want to hear more about it. But we also help each other quite a bit. So I think it's really good to be in a supportive environment. So, like, for instance, if there is something you want to do and you don't know how to do it, and there's somebody in your coven that has done it before, absolutely consult each other. I mean, we have everybody in our coven kind of does their own thing and specializes in certain things. Like we have certain people who are great with candle magic. We have certain people who are great with container magic. And like if there was something I wanted to do that I know a coven mate has specialized in or done well before, for instance, one of my coven mates, she knows runes and Norse mythology, and like that's her specialty. And if I ever had a question about runes or Norse mythology or working with one of the Norse gods, I would go to her and she would help me. Absolutely. You should be in a group where people are supporting one another in that way as well. But you should also come in with a little bit of foundational knowledge yourself. And that's something that you should talk to the coven about before you join. How much foundational knowledge should I have? Like, what are you looking for? What do you expect? Because expectations are important, just like Jasmine said.
Yeah, and I'll say too, for our coven and for our tradition, like there is a huge difference here between like folk or low magic and high and ceremonial magic. And like high magic doesn't mean it's better than or stronger than low magic. These are terms that relate to the source of the magic. So low magic is it's earthbound. It's low. It's low to the ground. It's earthly. And low magic or folk magic would be things like container spells, right? As an example, like jar spells. An example of high magic would be more like ceremonial. So it's calling on celestial forces, deities. It's using planetary magic. To me, part of the very definition of a coven is that it is ceremonial. Like we are not getting together to just do a jar spell, right? Like you can do that as an individual at home on your own. Now we might include and blend some folk magic practices into our coven's rituals and tradition, but that's to me part of the appeal of a coven is that you're able to participate and weave magic in a way that you really aren't able to do as a solitary practitioner just completely on your own.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to give the impression that we were just sitting around doing folk magic together, but we do consult with each other on our own individual practices. And a lot of our ceremonial magic, we all help each other learn how that's going to look because
Mm-hmm.
as you learn ceremonial magic, depending on what you're doing and how you're doing and what you're following, there's so many different ways to do high magic, ceremonial magic. It takes a little bit of coordination. So there's practicing. We have to go through our ritual document several
Rehearsal.
times.
Come on,
Yes,
rehearsal.
there's rehearsal, there's practicing, there's knowing where you stand, knowing what you're holding, knowing your role, knowing what you say, knowing what you do. Like we have to make it look smooth. Um, so in that we teach each other that as well. Absolutely. Um, we help
Yeah.
each other with those things too, because we here's the thing when you're together and you're practicing ceremonial magic and high magic together, if you all are not in sync, it's not gonna work as well. So there have been many times when someone is messed up or a couple people have forgotten and we had to start all over. And that's fine. And we're patient and we care about that and we want people to learn. So we're totally we're totally welcome to help each other with that. And yes, LBRP would be a high magic practice. Yes, it would. And then candle spell, yeah, would be lower magic, I would say.
Yeah, I want to say too, like in terms of the high magic, low magic, ceremonial magic, like that whole rhetoric bit. When it comes to training blood, that's also why the degree system is actually really beneficial. I know that even in this comments that we're reading, there are some witches, right, who aren't initiated, who are solitaries, but who I think sometimes are turned off of Covenry because they hear degree system and they think of it as like this hierarchy, which it is in a way, but the hierarchy is built to support and propagate the coven, and to create paths of ascension through the tradition so that way it can hive off and spread and grow. Like that's how covens have survived for centuries. um, that's also why it's good to have that difference between first degrees and second degrees, because your second degrees should be witches within the coven that are able to help those first degrees. Like it should not always be the responsibility of a third degree to come to everyone's aid anytime they have a question or they're struggling or whatever, because the whole coven functions as a circle. It's not a triangle with the HP at the very top. It's not a triangle with like third degree at the very top. It should function as a circle where people can weave in and out, in order to help. Like second degree witches are kind of like, to put it in like hair, in the hairdressing world, you have like stylists, and then you have like senior stylists, like stylists who have been doing this for a little while and like can maybe help kind of pick up when the salon manager like isn't around.
Yeah. It's not supposed to be a, hey, I'm better than you because I'm second degree. It's supposed to be like a, hey, I have proven that I have learned and practiced XYZ. So now I'm ready to help be more of a support role within the coven versus just a participant role. I'm ready to take on more responsibility. At least that's how our coven is structured. I know, like when our one of our initiates goes up to second degree, they are agreeing to take on more responsibilities in the community, more responsibilities within the coven, and different roles in rituals as well. They're no longer just doing what they were in first degree in ritual. They're doing something more. Um, they have more responsibilities, and I can't really go into that without breaking fourth power. But what I'm saying is like it's not necessarily, oh, you're better. It's more like you're just going to take on more responsibility. And I also think if you equate this to any kind of um, self improvement path, because, I do covenry for me as well. Like it makes me a better witch, it makes me a better person, right? Um, then I have to have a path to follow, knowing that there is a way to change and transform within my coven practice is going to help me be more invested long term. Because if I'm just going to stay first degree and do the same thing all the time, and I'm not knocking people that stay first degree forever, if that's what you want, I personally might feel like I'm getting stagnant. I personally might feel like I'm not challenging myself or pushing myself to grow and change and evolve as a magical practitioner within my coven space. So that's why I think the degree system helps personally. And I
Yeah,
feel
and
like
I
we
would
got off
say I
on a
would say too, like
tangent, but
second degrees are going to have, in some ways, also just like more experience than first degrees, because second degrees are going to be expected to uphold different rites, ceremonies, and traditions than first degrees would. So, yeah, and I think a lot of this just comes from a wound of Abrahamic trauma and from toxic hierarchical structures. Like, not everything that works within hierarchy is inherently necessarily toxic. And if
no.
you have that knee jerk reaction because there is degrees, then that's probably more of like something for you personally to decide whether you want to unpack that and work through that or not. Okay. Um, there's a question from us from a viewer. Hey, Jasmine and Paige, how do y'all feel on the gnosis that only certain things can be done while in Covenry, but not as a single practitioner? Personally, I agree with this. Like, if we're going to make this a black or white, yes or no extreme issue, like if we're not going to allow there to be gray area, if we're just going to say whether we agree or disagree, right off the bat, I agree, because I was saying earlier, like, you can do folk magic on your own. And to some extent, you can do ceremonial magic as a solitary practitioner too. Not every single ceremonial ritual requires there to be a full group. Like, kind of like what Blood brought up earlier, talking about the LBRP being more ceremonial and like candle magic kind of being more folk magic based. There's nothing stopping you from doing the LBRP as like a morning routine on your own, but you're not really going to be able to do other types of ceremonial rituals that require multiple roles all happening at the same time. So I do think that as a solitary practitioner, there are some things that you just will not have access to because you're only one person.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. I think there are some things that you just can't experience the same if you're by yourself too, especially when it comes to high magic or ceremonial magic. Um, just because it requires more energy than one person can provide. So like spell work is the building and releasing of energy into an intention. At least that's how I personally define it and experience it. So when I'm doing ceremonial magic with my coven, it's like we are practicing together and we're all adding our energy and intention to this specific purpose, and it builds and it affects me differently than when I'm doing it on my own. Um, and so I think that it just it's a cliche to say it just hits different. It just does. And it's not necessarily like you can't do certain things, but like you can't experience it in the same way, I guess is what I'm saying. Um, it just I don't know. I think that there, like Jasmine said, there are certain roles that other people have to play and fill for you in ceremonial magic that you cannot do if you're by yourself. You just can't.
Right. And like, okay, if we just drop off like 50 red bricks in your driveway, and like you, as a solitary practitioner, have to remove those red bricks in order to back your car out of the driveway, it might take you longer to remove those bricks, let's say, than it would if there was a group of 10 other people helping you remove those bricks. Like, it's not that you maybe can't get the same result, but it could be next to impossible, or it could also be so incredibly draining that it makes the work not even worth it. Like, versus if you have those 10 people helping you remove that roadblock. And then same can be said too, like there are some solitary practitioners that might have different tools, right? They might have different levels of experience. So someone that has like, I don't know, a sledgehammer versus someone who doesn't have any tools, they're just using their bare hands, it might take them a different amount of time to remove those bricks from that driveway that were dropped off. But it'll still be lighter and easier for a group of people to handle the situation than one person handling it on their own. That's kind of like how I would make that analogy.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I don't know. I think they're just like I said, it just hits different and it feels different. Is it better? Not gonna say it's better. That depends on your own
I'm laughing at this
your
comment.
own thing. It's like real sex is
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it. That's another good analogy. I like that.
So metallurgy is essentially using like the planetary properties with like metal and using metal in craft. Blood does a lot of like forge craft, and I highly recommend that people go check out Blood's channel because they're doing something really different over there that isn't really being as widely shown here on YouTube. So please go check out Blood's channel. I think Blood would probably be even better to like talk about some of that forge craft and metallurgy.
Ooh,
Um,
that's cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's a
yeah,
really cool way to
yeah.
practice. I love
One of
that.
these days, I want to get like a ritual tool from Blood. Like one of these days, I'm gonna get my hands on
One
it.
of these days.
One of these days. Okay, the next
I know. That's
question.
cool.
Um, Erica says, I am neutral. I don't see anything wrong with covens, but they aren't for everyone. And I'm not anti coven. I just don't want to be tied to people that are dabbling in things that they don't understand and have to heavily research and get a feel for them before I join. Some people are playing witch and don't actually want to do the work. Solitary practice allows you the freedom of practicing your way. I got away from religion because of all the rules. Some people do need rules, though. I do like having sisters and brothers to work common goals, though.
I love what she said or what they said about some people are playing witch and don't
Yeah.
want to do the work. I
I mean,
love
it's
that.
true. It's
It's
really
so
true.
true. It is so true, and that's why the vetting process is so important. But I love that, this person knows that it's exhausting. It is exhausting. It really is. It's tiring to find the right group and to find the right people. And if you don't want to be tied to people like that, then that's fine. I think that's perfectly valid. I love that this person called out the fact that people are playing witch because that is 99. I'm no shade to anybody, but shade in that
No shade,
99%,
but shade.
no shade, but shade. 99% of the people that we get, because I have people in my personal life, people that I work with, people that I'm friends with and stuff, people that are friends of friends that say, "Oh, you're in a coven. I'd like to be in a coven." And I'm like, "Well, come to a open ritual." And then they either don't show up or they come and they're like, "This isn't what I thought." And that's fine. That's great. But at the same time, it's like, are you playing or are you for real? For real? Because if you are playing witch and don't want to do the work that requires coven craft, like I said, that's fine. But just I'm with this. I'm with Erica on
I am too.
don't join a coven if that's what if you just like the aesthetic, if you just like the meditation aspect or the crystal aspect and you don't actually practice, that's okay, and there's no shade on that. But don't hit me up in my DMs and be like, I think I want to be in a coven if you're not actually doing
Right.
spell work. that's
Right.
that's my controversial take, I guess. It's like 99% of the people that hit me up are like, yeah, I want to do it. But like when I ask you a few basic questions, if you're about it, it's not because I want to police your witchcraft. I'm not trying to do that. It's because if I'm going to invite you to an open spot and introduce you to my coven family, don't embarrass me.
Right.
Like,
And here's the thing,
don't embarrass
guys.
me and waste my time.
Here's the thing as a coven witch. Like I understand that gatekeeping can be an issue in our community, but when it comes to covenry, individual initiated witches of that tradition are actually supposed to gatekeep their tradition. That's why there's an initiation system. Now, that doesn't mean that those initiated witches are telling you that you can't be a witch or that you can't be in the craft or that you can't practice magic or that you can't be a pagan. That has nothing to do with it. But like, we are allowed to use our own discernment about who we allow in our sacred ritual space. A lot of this is going to be done in the comfort of our own homes or intimate spaces. You might be around like my family. Like I kind of need to like you and know you for you to be in those spaces. But like if our coven isn't a fit for you, that's not us saying, well, you're not a real witch. Now there definitely are other covens out there, okay, that are going to act like if you're not initiated through them, then you're not legitimate. I'm not supporting that, but I am saying that when we draw a hard line in the sand, you don't have to like it, but like to some extent, when it comes to our tradition, you do have to respect it. Otherwise, you're breaking an entry. Like if traditions were kind of like houses within a neighborhood, and we're all just in this big neighborhood and there's this tradition, this coven, that coven. The way to get a key to come into our house is through our initiation process of our lineage and our tradition. If you just break in, like, you're not just going to break in, guys. Like, I don't know, I just wanted to make that clear because there are some people who act like initiated witches shouldn't be gatekeeping their own tradition, and it's like that's kind of the point, is to keep it pure and sacred. You can do your thing over there and nothing's stopping you from doing that, but like we have our thing going on over here,
And
and so we're going to be protective of it.
you can call yourself a witch and never even do a spell that lines up with what my idea of spell work is. That's fine. I'm not saying that just because they're not doing the kind of work that I do or believe what I believe means that they're not witches. Anybody can claim witch, and I encourage you to do that. It's empowering to do so, but um, we're not gatekeeping witchcraft. We're not gatekeeping, that. But we do, like Jasmine said, we have to protect our tradition. We have to. And just because you know us or want to be a part of it doesn't mean we're entitled to let you in. We can forfeit invitations or decline invitations or decline your participation at any time for any reason. We don't even have to tell you. Um, because we have to protect our tradition. We have to. We have to make sure everyone feels comfortable and we have to preserve it if we want it to last.
Yep. And we're also entitled to have our own opinion. Like, I would encourage Erica, and I love, love, love Erica. Okay. So this is just an encouragement here. Don't be neutral. Like, the point of the thread was to either be on one side or the other, right? And this person says, "Oh, I'm kind of neutral on this issue." Um, yeah, I feel like you're not really neutral, because to me it sounds like you're pro Covenry if the circumstances are right. That's what it sounds like to me. And as far as there are a lot of people cosplaying, there absolutely are. Um, there are a lot of witches who just want to dress up or be associated with practicing witches, which I take no time out of my day to police that, because there's no point in that. You can tell who's really with the shit and who's not just by talking to them. Like, and then there's also the unfortunate happenstance of our armchair witches, where there's plenty of witches I know who are so intelligent and like have such a wealth of knowledge, but they can't ever leave the armchair. Like, it's nice that you've read these books and that you have all this working knowledge, but at some point you have to put the book down and actually do it and build your own gnosis. And that's a huge rampant problem in the craft community as well, is that there's a lot of people who want to sit around and talk about craft and throw big buzzwords or authors or books or labels around to make it seem like they're extremely well versed, but they've actually never put anything into practice from those books, you know?
And that can be frustrating if you are an armchair witch and you're trying to join a coven because it's going to take us a minute through to sort through all the knowledge that you have to see if you've actually experienced anything that you're talking about. So, it's just dare, right? Um, to know, to will, to dare, to keep silent. So make
My
it to that third
unpopular,
pillar.
yeah, my unpopular witchy hot take, y'all, is I am personally invested in witchcraft that gets results. Okay? People want to act like there's something wrong with wanting power. I think all coven witches should seek empowerment and seek apotheosis and seek self deification. And um, you can talk a big game from the armchair, but if I can't see any of your results, and I'm not trying to uplift the whole prosperity gospel thing, I'm not saying that you have to have like 5 yachts and a mansion and, making 725K a year or something like crazy. But I'm saying, like, you can talk a big game, but if your life is in shambles as a witch, I'm going to think maybe the work's not really working for you. Or maybe you're not really doing the work, one or the other, because when you work the work works, y'all. Like, the work works when you work the work. So I'm going to have a hard time believing you.
Yeah, I think you've said before, when you put the craft first, your life is better. And, you can tell when people aren't necessarily doing what they should be doing. And Jasmine also has said magic works in the path of least resistance. So you have to not only be doing things in the astral, you have to do things in the physical too. If you're wanting to manifest a new job, you can't just burn a candle or, you know, do a honey jar spell and then call it a day. Like, you gotta put in your applications, you gotta follow up, you gotta interview, you gotta call people, like, you have to do everything in the physical too. So yeah, absolutely, 100% agree with your life needs to be straightened out
We've
as
got a
well.
question from a
Yeah,
viewer.
I see that. Go ahead.
I've never heard of the term spitches before, spy witches that infiltrate covens just to learn secrets, then take those and run. Ever run into that? I think I've seen that before. I don't think I've seen that so much in our tradition, because we do have protocols and things set up. Like there's an actual process of initiation. Like when I say initiation, I'm not just saying like you show up for a Sabbath and like you get handed a gold star and you're a first degree member. Like that's not what the initiation process looks like. From start to finish, from seeker to dedicant to petitioner to initiate, and even through initiation, there are trials and tribulations and omens and spirits involved. And I really feel like even going into the initiation, like if you have ill intentions, like you're really going to be the one hurting yourself by initiating into a trad with ill intentions. Like there's even that Gardnerian saying of like, it's better for you to rush upon this blade than enter this circle without like perfect love and perfect trust, I think is something in there like BOS. And I kind of vibe with that. I kind of resonate with that. Now I have seen people before who want to basically just like take a tradition and slap their own name on it. I have seen that without giving like any sort of credit or anything like that. But for us personally and our tradition, I wouldn't say that we've had any bitches. Anything to add to
No,
that?
our vetting process makes that dang near impossible. It I want to say like our vetting process is so good that I don't think that would happen. I'm not saying that that couldn't happen because people can be manipulative and sneaky and all that, but I am saying that it's not something that I'm worried about because I do trust my coven mates completely because we vetted them so much.
And we're
And
so
I
close. I mean, we are
yeah,
so closely knit and woven together that I think it would be very hard. And then also too, like there's an esoteric astral aspect to initiation as well. And so when you betray those oaths, like you're cursing yourself in a way. There's magic put into the initiation that blesses or curses you based on how you interact with the spirits of the tradition. So when you betray the tradition or you betray the coven, you're not just betraying a group of people, you're betraying their collective spirits and the ancestors of their craft lineage and their mighty dead. Like it's not going to be pretty, y'all.
nope, just don't do it. It's not smart. And if you're trying to spy on a coven, here's the thing. If you have a question and I can answer it, I will. Like I'm not trying to hide anything super important that someone might like if someone was starting a coven and they were like, "Hey, I have questions." We would all be willing to answer them. So, like we can answer questions
Yeah, for sure. And if, if there's
trying to steal
certain,
our
if there's
secrets, like it doesn't make
for sure. I think you were cutting in and out there a little bit, Paige. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
there's
sorry. I
you're
switched
fine.
places in my house, but go ahead.
No, you're fine. I think kind of what Paige was saying is that like if you have questions, it's better for you to ask those questions. And even if you feel like it's a stupid question, like ask the questions. Because for us in our trad, the worst thing that we can do is just say that we can't answer that. Like we just invoke the fourth power. That's worst case scenario is that we're not able to give you an answer. So it's better to ask the questions than to not ask. I do want to go over one more before we wrap it up, because we just have a few more minutes left of this stream tonight. I don't know why I thought we were going to be able to get through all 48 of these comments. Like both of us don't have the gift of gab, and we were going to go on and on. But maybe we'll have to do another part to this, you guys. So if you would like to see more of Paige and I kind of reacting to some of this comment, or if you would like me to see if maybe some of the other members of the coven would like to come on with Paige and I, let us know down below if you're enjoying this sort of content. And we can definitely do more. I want to read this one last comment because I think that there's some to unpack here too, and it's different from some of the other stuff because there's a lot of comments in this thread that are just of people basically saying like, if it works for you, great. If not, great. Like there's a lot of people just kind of saying that, and so I'm not just going to read 8 of the same comments, but this person says, I'm someone who roots for covens, but I also see weak spots in the format. For instance, the idea that you should find a set fellow of practitioners and agree to work with them long term and perfect love and perfect trust asks a lot of a new relationship before it's necessarily had enough time to mature. Plus, there's a certain level of uniformity expected among members that may not reflect reality, considering how diverse the pagan community truly is. I'm just going to stop the comment there because there's more, but like I I think in terms of this comment, like weak spots in the format, the idea that you should find a fellow set of practitioners, to me like the goal is to work with people that I am very close with long term. I don't think Covenry has to be for life. Like there's a way out if it's not for you anymore. Um, but I do kind of expect to change and evolve and grow with them as the wheel turns long term. And I think that part of the process of initiation and petitioning is there to help make sure that those bonds will be able to form. So I don't think it's asking a lot out of a new initiate because there should already be relationships forming, and also they're initiating to first degree. Like after initiation, it's not like they're initiating to second degree or third degree. They're initiating to first degree.
Yeah, I agree with that in that, like, you have to really like those people that you're with. Just the perfect love and perfect trust thing, nothing's perfect, okay? There's nothing's perfect. But you have to be as close with those people as you can. And it is a lot to ask of a new relationship, but to be fair, if you're actually vetting properly, it shouldn't be a new relationship. I mean, I don't think that it's fourth power to say that I knew Jasmine and most of my coven mates at least 6 months to a year before I initiated.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I knew them because we had taken classes together.
We
We'd
went
gone
on the
out to dinner
vacation
together.
together.
Yeah, we went on a vacation together. They came over to my house for dinner together. We did some paranormal investigating together. I went to open sabbats. Like, it should not be a new relationship. You
Mm-hmm.
should not. Um, and if it is a new relationship, then maybe that vetting process needs to be longer. Um, but yeah, it is to ask someone to find it is hard to find a coven. I'm extremely lucky that I found the group that I found as I want to say not necessarily easily, but like as naturally as I found it. I went looking and I found it. Like it was not. It's nice that I live in a city that has a diverse group of people that has several covens that operate in our city or in our area that I could have chosen from. Like not everybody has that luxury, but if you're wanting to do covenry and do it right, it is worth it to take the time to find people that you can trust and care about and want to work with long term. That's just my opinion. It's worth it. It's a lot of work, but nothing that's worth it is easy.
Yeah. And I think we'll save the rest of this person's comment for another time when we do this again, because I think that there's more here to unpack than what we have time for tonight. But I just wanted to touch on that aspect because, like me personally, I don't really use the vocabulary of perfect love and perfect trust. And I think that most people who are not Gardnerians or Alexandrians probably also don't have a good working interpretation of that, because that's kind of where this is coming from. Um, to me, like by the time you're initiated, I'm already seeing you as a craft sibling. And like that level of respect and love is earned through the trials and tribulations of going from seeker to dedicant to petitioner to initiate, and then to actually getting through your initiation. So by the time all that's happened, that is easily half a year minimum. It's going to take you several turnings of the wheel while the sabbats are open to be able to even dedicate, because like there's a whole step between even petitioning. You have to come to some sabbats like physically in person. You have to meet some of the coven, and those don't roll over. Like it's not like if you go to 2 sabbats this year and like you went to 1 sabbat last year and 1 sabbat the year before, that means you've gotten your sabbats in as eligibility requirement. No, it has to be in the same year. So chances are we're going to have known each other for a minimum of 6 months. And I feel like that's a long enough amount of time to be able to determine if you're the right fit for our coven and if our coven is the right fit for you. And once you get through initiation, the coven should meet you with open arms and treat you as if you're their new craft sibling. And it should just be organic, wouldn't you say, Paige? Like it just happens organically. Like I don't think it's forced or asking of too much.
No, absolutely not. I mean, if there was ever anybody that I felt didn't like me, or I felt like I was forcing myself to like or get along with, I would have addressed that during the vetting stage. Like there may be times when you are in the vetting stage and your high priestess or high priest or someone in the coven says, hey, so and so doesn't really know you very well and express that, so maybe you should reach out to them and like get to know them a little bit better and make a special effort. There's nothing wrong with that, but like you should be actively working on these relationships before you even go into initiation, because 100% of those people that are already initiated should be rooting for you and wanting you to succeed, because that's what an initiation is. It's bringing you through, and they should be all reaching out a hand to bring you through that process. And if they're not, then that's not the right coven for you. And I don't think that's flawed. I think that's as someone else said in the chat, they said, I think, to be fair, some of what this person considers weaknesses, I would consider strengths. So I'd have to respectfully disagree. That's kind of where I'm at with this. Like, I would consider that a strength to find a group that fits well with you and that you trust and they trust you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this has definitely been fun, everyone. Like, and I appreciate everyone like leaving some of that feedback on the Facebook post. It's still there somewhere on my page. So if you want to leave some feedback there for us to come back to, maybe in a later video, feel free. I think we've covered just about as much as we're going to be able to tonight. Paige, I really appreciate you coming on and like holding space and holding center with me and sharing some of this. I feel like it's important to do this kind of community work as coven witches, because there's a lot of the community that doesn't see certain aspects of this, and we're able to answer some questions and shed some light on some things in ways, that people are interested. I think there's a lot of mysticism around Covenry, and they're supposed to be like, those are the mysteries. So there's definitely going to be some things that we're not able to talk about publicly, but this is probably in the top 5 list of things I get the most questions about on my channel.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on and letting me give my input. And like I said, I just want to end with saying that you are no less of a witch if you're not in a coven. You're no more of a witch if you are. And there are many ways to practice witchcraft. And I just really hope that this has been enlightening for those of you that want to learn more about it.
And thank you, everyone who's been in the chat. The chat's been absolutely, the vibes have been immaculate. So I appreciate that. And with that, we are going to log off. So blessed be.
Bye.